With Season 2 wrapping up, I wanted to make a video about something that I think every Mythic Plus player runs into, how your class choice can make or break a Mythic Plus season. So what's my story with this? Well, this is my Evoker. Last season, I hit a score of 3480, earned the 0.1% title, and all of this on the meta pick augmentation. This season, I am playing Retribution Paladin. Same level of play, currently sitting at 3803, but completely different experience. Why? Because this isn't the meta spec. So let's talk about it. Why does the meta matter? What makes the spec meta? And what does it mean for all of us just trying to push keys? So let's have a look at some past seasons to see what generally creates the meta. So first up, we have Dragonflight Season 2, the rise of the infamous Zigzodia comp. Guardian Druid was nearly unkillable and pumped lots of damage. Holy Paladin brought lots of healing and strong utility. And the DPS trio of Fire Mage, Shadow Priest, and Orc Evoker had insane synergy. So Orc boosted group damage and tankiness, Priest PI lined up perfectly with Mage CDs, and Fort Buff was just an added bonus. And the Mage brought a bursty and priority target focus damage profile that's basically perfect for Mythic Plus content. All of this put together led to a situation where there was no real viable alternatives to any other comp whatsoever. So then Season 1 of War Within. We were a little bit more flexible, but still pretty rigid for this season. Prop Paladin was the only tank that could consistently survive what was an extremely demanding season for tanks. Disc Priest was borderline mandatory for pain suppression and had really good HPS throughput. Augmentation did Org things, and Enhanced Shaman simply just did more damage in cooldowns than any other class in the game. The last slot had a little bit more wiggle room. You could have something like DK, Boomkin, Mage, Rogue. They were all viable choices, but the core was pretty much locked in. And now the current season, which is a little bit different. So this time we've actually seen two fairly distinct and competitive comps at the top end. The most dominant one that we're all aware of is Vengeance Demon Hunter tank. Great survivability, sigils for mob control. Disc Priest, again, not just for raw healing output this time, but because shielding makes dealing with really heavy mechanics a lot smoother. Boomkin brings strong damage and one of the only AoE silencers outside of Vengeance Demon Hunter. Arcane Mage melts priority targets, and Unholy DK just rounds it out with really high uncapped AoE damage, good survivability, and solid group utility. On the other hand, we've also got the physical comp. So this stacks a lot of physically focused raid buffs, consists of Brewmaster, Resto Shaman, and a rotating mix of Warrior, Hunter, Outlaw Rogue, and Feral Druid. These comps run with much smaller pools and generally suit the low target cap damage profiles of the physical specs. It's important to note that these comps don't really mix well. You can't swap, say, an Arcane Mage for a Hunter, otherwise the performance will drop fairly drastically, so they're kind of independent from one another. There are other specs like Enhance, Sin Rogue, Ret Paladin that are viable, but they're far less represented at the top end of play. So what actually makes a meta comp rise to the top? Well, there's usually three big reasons. So one, synergy. Some specs just enable each other really well. Think Shadow Priest, Fire Mage, and Orc Evoker from Dragonflight Season 2. 2, they solve a dungeon-specific problem. So right now there's tons of dangerous caster mobs, so VDH and Boomy are top tier because of their AoE silencers and sigils. In other seasons it was about survival, so Orc became more required. And then reason 3 is sometimes some specs are just busted. So it's rare, but when it does happen, that spec generally dominates for the entire season. So you think Enhanced Shaman from War Within Season 1, just doing more damage than any other spec. But at what point does this actually really matter? If we look purely at performance, even at the highest level of keys in the world, they're being cleared by off-meta specs. I'm going to play some footage of some of these players in the background. Their links will be down in the description below. So we can take Ellesmere, for example, pushing top keys on Holy Paladin. a spec many don't consider to be that viable this season, and he's currently now sitting as rank 1 healer in all of NA. We've got Shindig running a very unconventional comp of Rogue, Ret, Boomy, Resto Shaman, and Vengeance Demon Hunter, still pushing well beyond title range with no issues at all. And probably my favourite is Skeezy. So this guy has pushed to title playing exclusively Frost Mage, no rerolling, no meta chasing, no pre-made group, just slogging it out in LFG. So these aren't just isolated cases. If we look across the entire Raider.io leaderboard, there are plenty of players earning title on just about every spec. I'll throw up some stats to show some of the representation here. So clearly off-meta can work even at the very highest level. But unfortunately, the meta still has a pretty powerful influence on the broader community and how the player base behaves as a whole. So at the very top end, like above title level keys, yes, the meta comp is usually the most efficient and most optimized option. However, there are plenty of skilled players in coordinated groups and even outside of coordinated groups that can and do make off-meta specs work. We just saw it. There's plenty of specs, plenty of classes that aren't considered meta that are reaching the absolute top tier of the player base when it comes to Mythic Plus. Right now, title level keys are around plus 19 with some 20s. Below that, even plus 17s and under, you can get away with running a comp that just brings like a few key utilities, like Lust, basically. I mean, hell, I timed a 28 Everbloom in Dragonflight Season 3 without Lust entirely. That was a title range key. It's absolutely doable. But most groups don't see it that way. Even in like plus 12s, you will have players that will regularly just ignore off-meta picks to try and wait for these meta specs. So I've been there myself. Applying for plus 18s is just a way to re-roll my own key, and having already timed a bunch of 18s and 19s only to watch the group basically wait for ages just for a DK to show up. And this isn't just strangers either. This is like BattleNet friends, like people that I know who would rather wait 45 minutes for a meta spec to show up than invite me playing the off-meta Ret Paladin. It sucks, even if you know that you're probably better than half of the players that are applying for that group, but it is what it is. And this is in a season like the current one where class diversity is actually better than it's been in a very long time. If you compare that to Dragonflight Season 2, where the Exodia comp was all but required, even then you had people gatekeeping keys that were like 5, 6, 7 levels lower than title range keys just because they weren't on an evoker or a mage. Totally unnecessary and completely disconnected from what the key actually requires. So how does this impact general day-to-day gameplay? If you're in a regular group, you've got a team that you run with week to week, the meta matters a lot less. Take Shindig from before. When you've got a network or a group you can play with, you can play whatever you're comfortable, and even if you lose a bit of efficiency, you can make it work at a very high level. But if you don't have that group, or if you're just straight pugging, it's a completely different story. Random groups will treat the meta like it's gospel. If your spec or class doesn't match what they've seen the top YouTuber or Twitch streamer use, then you're just not getting in. Back in Dragonflight Season 1, I played Orgavoker. I could get into IO keys outside of my region that are probably well above like what I should have been doing after a couple of applications to these groups. This season, playing off meta, I sometimes will have nights where if my group isn't running, I can sit in LFG for hours and just not get invited by a single person. That's sort of the reality at times. If you're not the meta, then tough luck. So here's what I've learned, and here's what I will recommend for other people as well. Going forward, I am going to stick to meta specs, not because off meta specs don't work, but because it's just not worth the headache of trying to make an off meta spec work. I'm pushing title keys. Given how few of those there are floating around at times, I'd rather not spend a good portion of my energy fighting against the meta. Even in a pre-made group, if you're running the meta comp, it just makes the climb a little bit smoother. It's built to succeed for that reason. It's the meta for a reason. for everyone else, especially if you're just running vault keys or casually pushing score, like, please just invite the player and not the spec. If you've got top players that are timing keys this season with bad comps, your plus 13 doesn't need an Unholy DK or a Balanced Druid to get over the line. If your goal is to push towards those higher ends and you don't have a stable group, definitely play the meta. It's already hard enough. Don't make it harder by picking a spec that people just dismiss because it's not within the preconceived notion of what's the best. At the end of the day, you play what you enjoy. But if you want to climb high, save yourself the stress. And remember, though, that the meta isn't this sort of like divine rule book that you need to follow to a T. It's rare that it's actually so rigid that you need to run those specs, and particularly below, realistically anything below like absolute top world keys, you can make most classes work. But yeah, to wrap it up, let me know your thoughts. How's your Mythic Plus experience been? Generally good, bad, frustrating? Drop your stories in the comments. I'd love to hear how people's experiences have been playing meta or off meta specs. If you enjoyed the video, hit the like and subscribe button. I'm going to have plenty more Mythic Plus content coming as Season 3 of War Within rolls around. If you want to catch me live, I stream on Twitch. I will pop the link down below in the comments. But yeah, thank you for watching. Until next time, gamers, take care.